bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good Wednesday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in with us here on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got you for the next couple hours to talk Philadelphia Eagles and football in general, because they got a big game coming up about 11 days from now that, at least I have interest in, and I would think Eagle fans would have some interest in, because this time last year, get ready for the Eagles playing in the Super Bowl. That's not the case this year, but we will not ignore the Chiefs and the 49ers. Johnny Mack on the Eagle front, no real news yesterday. No new additional hires, guys, that either Vic Fangio or Kellen Moore will be adding to their staff. They've moved pretty damn quickly, got the coordinators in place early, and have already had a couple of positional coaches added to the staff. A little bit of a downtime, or the next one you expect to be a Kellen Moore add on the offensive side?
Well, yeah, I've been expecting the quarterback coach to come pretty quickly, because I think it's going to be Doug Nussmeier. It's simply because he's been with Kellen for a number of years. Generally, you hear, on a lot of things are changing rapidly in the NFL, but the Senior Bowl is typically a place where you interview and hire assistants. So things can, but I heard yesterday Howie's not even there. So maybe he's coming late. Nick's not even there. So maybe they're coming late, only for a couple days. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, I mean, I expect it to fill out pretty quickly on both sides, and Doug is the one obvious one, I would say. But maybe he's got other options. Maybe you got to work something out. Who knows how that stuff kind of unfolds? I would say there was some interesting stuff from the Senior Bowl, though, and the fact that Greg Bedard all of a sudden drops that, oh, yeah, the Eagles were interested in Bill Belichick. I don't know if you saw. I'm like, and Greg's not, Greg's plugged in. That's not your typical somebody speculating like A.J. Brown's getting traded. That's not some wild speculation. That guy is plugged in when it comes to the Patriots. So the eyebrows raised when I saw that. And
now hold on a second. Was it Greg Bedard reporting it?
He didn't report it. He said it on a radio show up in the Boston area.
Right.
And
I don't know. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you saw it. Just absolutely pisses me off as a radio guy. Mike Florio took a shot in the reporting of that yesterday, that Greg Bedard said it on the radio, didn't put it under his byline. So you can get away with anything. You can say anything the hell you want on the radio. It really doesn't count unless you put it under your byline.
Well,
you're a writer. I'm a radio guy. here's my Mike Florio salute. You're not held accountable for anything you say on the radio.
Well,
You
there's a
douchebag.
difference. There's a difference, and because I do it both, there is a difference, and I'm usually with you. I'm usually in the Florio douchebag category, but and he's spends his life aggregating other people's work and then takes shots.
Mike, if you say something on your stupid TV show with Chris Sims,
yeah, exactly,
it doesn't really count until you put it on your website.
Now
it's
the only
irrelevant
thing
until you type it out and put it somewhere so it can be.
Well, if Greg in Greg's defense, he said, he was asked about Senior Bowl scuttlebutt. He's down at the Senior Bowl, and there's, as I said, it's typically a convention of NFL coaches and personnel people. So when you're down there, you do pick up some info. And they were asking him specifically about Senior Bowl scuttlebutt. And he framed it in a way that he wasn't reporting it. He said he heard through, and he actually said Senior Bowl rumor mill, is that the Eagles were very interested in Belichick if things didn't work out with Nick Sirianni, meaning if Nick didn't agree to all the changes that were decreed. That's another thing. By the way, if the Eagles... part of what the Eagles do that I don't think they don't get is outside, like everybody in this league thinks Nick got ordered to fire his coordinators and his assistant coaches. Whether that's true or not, that's the belief around the league. And I think the Eagles sometimes forget about that. And when it comes to the perception in the industry, as opposed to outside the industry, which isn't important. But in this particular instance, he said two teams were back channeling on Bill during the season, and he knew one was Atlanta, and he didn't know who the other one is. And now he's pretty convinced, that's the term he used, that the Eagles were the other one. I mean, if that's the case, what the hell are you doing? What are we doing here? And I think Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. You're in season. You're already thinking about. I said, Nick Sirianni. I criticized Nick Sirianni. What are you thinking about demoting Sean Desai when you're 8-1? If you're the Eagles and you're kind of falling apart late and you're already back channeling, who knows when it started? I don't. It's a mess. It is a mess, Joe.
So your problem is with back channeling? Is that what you're saying? Just you should be zero laser focus on the task at hand.
Well, you should be zero laser focus, but that's not it's the whole thing. It's the whole thing from start to soups and nuts from start to finish. The ordering of the head coach to fire people, to hire people, to get rid of people he respects and likes, to hold on. Just fire the guy if you don't believe in him. It's a giant flipping mess. And I would have said the same thing if Doug Peterson agreed to come back. It's a mess. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a mess. And by the way, now that Ben Johnson is going back to Detroit, and that guy wants $15 million a year as a first-time head coach. Yeah. And by the way, the Eagles aren't hiring him if he wants $15 million a year. However, you're going to hear this on and I guarantee you, Jody, the entire stinking year, you're going to hear about Ben Johnson and Bill Belichick, unless the Eagles start 10-1, and unless they're a significant Super Bowl contender, you're going to be fielding calls on every stinking shift about Ben Johnson and Bill Belichick, and the Eagles can say that's unfair. You created this. You created this atmosphere, and be prepared for it, Jody, because you're going to get it.
We're going to get it, and you're right. The Eagles are going to get it, and I have much less of a problem with the way this offseason has played itself out, that they demanded, and I think that is not too strong a word, Nick Sirianni, you're moving on from your coordinators. We're going to have 2 new coordinators here, and then we're going to give them some latitude to pick guys to work underneath them. So your coaching staff is going to look drastically different than it did at the end of the season. And you need to sign off on this now, Nick, or you're going to leave the room and Jeffrey and I are going to have another conversation, and we may call you back in and go, just like we said, the coaching staff is going to be different because you're not going to be running it. Thank you very much for your participation. That's the way that it played out. And I don't have a problem with that. And I don't even have a problem with the fact that, yeah, they're undercutting the guy, and he certainly enters the season with less of a power base than he did before. He knows his marching orders, and it can work with him as a CEO coach. Yes, there are even levels to being a CEO coach, and I wouldn't say he's at the top level. I don't have a problem with the way that they handled it. Will it work? Will it fail miserably? We'll have to let the season play out. But I don't think that they did something outrageous that nobody's ever done before. But one of the offsprings of it, as you just pointed out, and they got to be ready to deal with it, is the coach starts the season on the hot seat. I won't use the word lame duck. And again, we get into semantic debates in sports talk, and talk radio, call whatever you want. I don't think he's lame duck because he's got another year to go on his contract, but he's on the hot seat. He knows it. The Eagles know it. Every single fan on the face of the planet who calls themselves an Eagle fan knows it. So you got to deal with the fallback, which is people are going to be, oh, Belichick's come in. Oh, they're going to pay that big tab for their judge. Yeah, that's part of next year. When you do what you did, and it's within your rights to do it, and it could very well work, and I'm not going to complain about it, but you are changing the dynamic of what you're going to have to listen to from your public. They're going to all year long be talking about Nick Sirianni. How is he dealing with being on the hot seat? That's just part of it. And I think they're up to it. You think Howie Roseman is hearing that stuff? You think he's worrying about that stuff? Or do you think it's like water off a duck's back?
Well, I don't know. He looked pretty beaten down during the postseason press conference. I think Marcus, called the bags under his eyes wind socks, and he looked like he'd been shoveling Jeffrey Lurie's driveway out. You can imagine how big that is during the snowstorm. So he didn't look like he was taking it well. I would say that. Neither did Nick. We all said,
let me jump in. Let me ask you a question off that. It's your observation is on point. Do you think from a Howie perspective, that's more because he doesn't like when he has to do this? He doesn't like putting his coach under this kind of microscope and pressure? Or do you think that Jeffrey applied a little pressure to his general manager as well?
I think Jeffrey applied a little pressure to his general manager as well. I think the assumption is, and by the way, I'm, compared to most GMs in this league, Jeffrey has a extremely long leash, as I talk about all the time. That's one of the advantages that he has over the other people. But Jeffrey's already proven twice that he will move on from people he's extremely close to. First Joe Banner, and then Howie the first time. So it's not like he's got a lifetime contract. And we always talk about everybody having a shelf life, and his shelf life is just a hell of a lot longer than most people. Most GMs are bananas. You buy them, you got 2 days, and you better get them done or they're worthless. He's a Twinkie. He's got a long shelf life. But eventually it's going to get a little stale. So, yeah, I think there was some pressure. And the word I keep hearing is uncomfortable. He wants to make people uncomfortable. He thinks people got too comfortable. And I get that part of it. And you mentioned they're not the first team. By no means am I saying they're the first team to do this kind of stuff. But this is what bad organizations do. This is not what good organizations do. They want to profess themselves as, and I'm not even going to use gold standard because Jeffrey thinks that's one of his major mistakes, but he always wanted to be the Patriots, the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady Patriots. That's what he wanted to be. And, he's put together one of the most well-regarded franchises in the NFL. That still stands today. I would say they're one of the more well-regarded organizations in the NFL. But this is what bad organizations do. And when you start doing stuff like this, all of a sudden you're not going to reach that level you want to reach when it comes to reputation and things like that. Not that that's reputation is important, but I do think it's important for him. So, there's a little bit of a disconnect. Again, when he doesn't reach expectations, he is. And some people might look at that as a good thing. Some people might look at that as a good thing to have high standards and say, if you don't reach these high standards, you're going to pay. I think he's too harsh. I mean, I don't know how many ways I can say it, but I think he's too harsh. This team won 11 stinking games. How many teams won 11 games in the NFL? There's 32 teams. I get the end of the season was a disaster, but you're in a position where you have to take the step back and you can't act emotional. You can't act like the 2 a.m. caller who's saying fire everybody. And by the way, if you want to fire everybody, let's be honest. Everybody says, when you talk about the head coaches versus the players, what does everybody say, Jody? You're the son of a former GM in a different sport, but nonetheless, same type of thing. Everybody says you can't fire all the players, so you got to fire the coach. Well, that's true. You can't fire all the players, and sometimes you need to move on from the coach, and maybe it's unfair. But, you're firing what ends up, coaching staffs are 20 plus deep on the Philadelphia Eagles. You're firing whatever it ends up being, 15 guys. Fire the head coach and start over. If that's your belief, you got to get these guys who have insulated the head coach, who are loyal to the head coach, who the head coach is loyal to, and you want to remove all of them, then just remove the head coach.
I'll give you an example of one time when this actually worked. There are 3 different ways Jeffrey could have handled it during this offseason. Fire everybody, as you just said. Start at the head and work your way down. And once again, like we've already seen, Jeff Stoutland stays. Everybody else got the hell out. And that could have happened again. Or you could have said continuity wins, continuity rules. We won 11 games. What were the numbers that Howie threw out? 26-4 prior to our 6-game losing. Fine, we know what the numbers are. They're outrageously good, but then they got outrageously bad. We're going to just overlook the 6 of 7 collapse, historic collapse, and we're just going to keep everything in place. Or there's a middle ground, and that's some go, some stay. And that's what the Eagles chose, and they decided to stay with Sirianni. John, I was still doing shows in New York. I was probably down here in Philadelphia, but I'm doing both FAN and WIP. And there was a large contingent of Giant fans that wanted to see Tom Coughlin gone. When he first came to the Giants, taskmaster that he was, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're officially late. Veteran guys didn't like him a little bit. Gotta get this sergeant out of here, run him out of town. And they stayed the course. They made coaching changes. They asked Coughlin and Coughlin himself made changes and lightened up the way that he did things. They kept Coughlin in place when the majority of the fan base was screaming for his head on a pike. And Coughlin responded by winning Super Bowls. So it can be done. You can keep a guy in place as the head coach, but still make other changes. And sometimes it works out. That's a one case, and it happens all the time in the National Football League. So I'm not saying, oh my God, it's going to be the exact same thing for the Eagles. Who the hell knows whether it's going to work or not? But it isn't outrageous to take the course of action that the Eagles have taken. Others have before and seen it work for them.
Well, you're right. You're certainly right about Tom and some of the angst and pushback. And you were closer to that situation than me. Now, I don't know if they allowed him or if he made decisions to change coordinators or he was ordered to. But the feeling here is that Nick was ordered to. So I think that changes the dichotomy a little bit. And I don't know where Nick is personally. People. I can't tell anybody to walk away from a $7 million a year job. I mean, I think that's unrealistic. So I'm not going to blame him. But I am a little surprised considering how loyal he's been to his coaches, how he's talked about his coaches, that he didn't go the Doug Peterson route. I'm a little surprised by that. And you have all this, and as I said, Philadelphia's a little bit different. Even as strange as it sounds, even than New York, the biggest media market in the world, the Eagles have the largest media contingency in the NFL. And, we do this show. There's other shows that have popped up, I think, partially because of the success of this show, but nonetheless, people are always talking about this team, and they're always under the microscope. And this Belichick stuff and this Ben Johnson stuff, but by the way, the Ben Johnson stuff has nothing to do with them. It's just the natural evolution of where fans are going to go. And you created this environment. So yes, winning cures everything. If you win, nothing matters. Nothing. They might all hate each other. And it still doesn't matter. If you have better players than everybody else and you're going to win a lot, none of it's going to matter. And that's, if I'm Howie, that's the way I'm approaching this. Just get the best roster and it'll take care of itself. But I don't think they're going to have the best roster because they have so many holes to fill, so many things they have to do, so many decisions they have to make. And then it becomes more important to have the right people in place to maximize what you have. And boy, I don't know. I don't like it a little bit the way this is unfolding.
And I'll tell you that I'm more questioning the fact that Howie is not at the Senior Bowl practices, because I've been saying this for the better part of a week now. At some point, the worm will turn and the attention will become to the players rather than the coaches. We're now analyzing, probably overanalyzing the defensive back coach hiring. Yeah, who the actual defensive backs are going to be is going to have a lot bigger impact on whether the Eagles win or lose games next year than the guy who's standing on the sidelines putting them in the best position possible. But it's the way that the NFL season works. You get your coaching staff in play, but you're usually supposed to going to be ready to hit the ground running when you know you're not competing in the Super Bowl. You need to be there for the next churn, for the next move of player moves. And
by the way, I'm not there. Obviously, I wish I was there. From the people I saw that are there, nobody spotted Howie. That doesn't mean he's not there. But I didn't see anybody typically.
Have you done Senior Bowl weeks before?
Yeah.
Well, Howie was the general manager.
Well, not when I haven't been there in years, so not when I was covering the Eagles. So I wasn't paying attention. I was paying attention.
I never have been, but I, like you, talk to Eagles guys. If Howie's there, you know Howie's there. Howie is not a guy who's going to be hiding back in his hotel room.
Well, if you're there, you're not going to be hiding in your hotel room. But you can also come in late. They might be coming in later in the process. So I don't want to say he's not going to be there. No,
I know you didn't say that. I didn't say that either, but they've already missed the first day of practices. And that's not the usual MO of the Eagles. They're usually there all week long. And it's probably because, they are making as many.
Well, a lot of recent seasons, they haven't been there, but they haven't been there because they've been playing. Like last year, they weren't.
You're right. Yeah. Last year, Howie was kind of busy. I get that. Yeah. But if they're not in the Super Bowl, and they have been to a couple Super Bowls, which is more than most teams in the National Football League over the last decade. But I was referring to years where they're completely available, not prepping.
And people from the Eagles, are there, just not Howie and Nick weren't spotted, but they have people there. So Alec Alaby's there. I know Jeff Scott's there, one of their personnel guys. I think he was spotted. A couple other guys. But so they have people there. It's not like they don't have people on boots on the ground, so to speak. So just wanted to clarify that.
When your two biggest boots are still in the closet, I'm questioning that. Sorry, Eagle fans. If how dare you question Howie and Nick Sirianni? Everybody on the planet's questioning Nick Sirianni these days.
Well, a lot of teams, the Rams being the most notable, they don't even go to the combine anymore. never mind the Super Bowl. They have scouts, but Sean McVay, Les Snead, they don't even go because the assumption is they get more work done if they stay back in their facilities. So the NFL's changing a little bit when it comes to stuff like that.
So 31 out of the 32 teams have.
No, there's more than I just used. The Rams were the first. There are many more, the copycats that don't. You will see when the combine comes, you will be stunned how many coaches are not talking because they're not there. Because you have to talk. The coach and the GM has to talk.
If you're in attendance, right? Yeah.
And there will be multiple coaches missing, multiple GMs missing because it has started down that route. The Rams, I just mentioned the Rams because they were the first that I know of. But last year, there were a number of coaches missing and a number of GMs missing.
And just a quick note, and we got plenty of time to get to this, and we need to get to Mike Gill because he's already logged in with us. I talked to Rick Saratella this weekend. A change at the combine this year. Players are allowed to have individual meetings with teams. You schedule who you want to see, and then they give you only so much time, whatever. They're having group meetings. That players are going to meet with groups of teams, and it will be done in more like an auditorium than a individual hotel room. That you're going to be able to send in 2 representatives, 6 teams at a time, around like a circle, firing questions at the young guy. They're doing it to try and just be a little bit more efficient with the process. Sounds really friggin' weird to me. You're asking questions while teams are sitting there that you might want to take a player over in the draft. Well, we move up to take the guy. Remember what he said in the question session. Just weird. There's going to be some changes to the combine, but shame on any team that shows up without their coach and their general manager for the combine. That's my opinion. That's why we're here, to give you our opinions. McMullen, McDonald. We're going to get the opinion of Mike Gill, our guy from down the shore. He's up next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You've got Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. We've got Mike Gill from the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN Radio down the shore. And it looks like he's in a hoodie today. Would I be correct? Florida Atlantic hoodie. Okay. Would I be correct in assuming you went hoodie because you heard the report from Boston yesterday that there was back channeling between the Eagles and Bill Belichick that if he became available, they'd have interest. You're making a Belichickian hoodie stand, aren't you?
Right, I am the hoodie now. I did tell John I was going to go polo today, but then pulled an audible at the last minute because where I have to go after this, I need something a little bit more warm. So, yeah, the Belichick stuff was interesting. I definitely figure that there was a lot of people in my audience, Jody, on the radio that have this perception that a guy like Belichick wouldn't work with Howie Roseman because everybody feels that Roseman's so hands-on and that they basically and now this is like the second time. I don't know if you guys, did you hear the Julian Edelman comments that he said that Belichick really respected Roseman and would love to work with him?
They're very close. That was part of it. Yeah.
And these comments also suggested that Belichick and Roseman would get along fine, which would then ask, I'm sure everybody wondering would say, well, then why didn't they talk to Belichick then? A lot of the stuff that I've been reading and hearing, in fact, I was reading an article from Andrew Brandt right before I came on, it basically suggesting a lot of teams just feel like maybe the game is, I don't want to say past him, but they're looking for younger, longer-term people. They're looking to find the next Belichick, not Belichick now.
Because they're all morons. They all want the guy who's going to be there for 25 years. And, like Carolina, they get guys who are going to be there for a year, maybe less than a year because they keep the churn going. I do think people don't like Howie's very close to Dave Ziegler, the Raiders' former GM, who's the Patriots essentially was their GM, but they didn't call him that. He's very close to Josh McDaniels. He recommended him to be the head coach in 2021. He's very close to Matt Patricia. That's the reason Matt was here. Yeah, he's got this close relationship. And Jeffrey's obviously obsessed with the Patriots. So that's the connection. It's a real connection. But yeah, I always kind of put it to the side because of that reason that, well, Bill's going to want personnel control. And that's probably why he's not, to be honest, the head coach in Atlanta right now.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Might have been just a radio report or might have actually been under someone's byline. But I know I read at least twice that through the lengthy interview process they had too with Belichick, the owner came out of it going, wait a minute, he's going to run everything?
Yeah.
That he's going to make all the decisions. And he came out and he laid out how he's run his organization. He wants to run the exact same organization in Atlanta. And they said, give us Raheem Morris. That kind of tells you that Belichick wasn't ready, no matter how much he respected Howie Roseman, to have a leopard change his spots. I just don't buy that was happening.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guess the was it a conversation on the radio? Is this where
it was? Yeah. Greg was asked about the Senior Bowl. Greg Bedard, the Senior Bowl rumor mill, what he heard, and
he's a writer who was on the radio,
right?
Yes,
but According to Mike Florio, it doesn't really count.
Well, I was wondering if it was a report that he wrote, or was it a reporter who was on the radio? I read it this morning. I woke up way too early this morning. I got all this stuff in my head. And the thing that I thought was interesting in it was, I guess the suggestion was made that if things kind of go awry in the middle of the season, say, oh, hey, Doc Rivers,
that's what I was saying. The worst part of this, we can talk about whether Bill would acquiesce to Howie, how close the relationship was. But to your point, Mike, they didn't talk to Bill Belichick because Nick Sirianni agreed to all the instances. Obviously, they would have talked to him if they fired the head coach. They didn't talk to anyone. Well, they back-channeled, but they didn't talk to anybody officially because they didn't fire the head coach. So that part of it makes some sense. Now, to your point, and this is what I already brought up with Jody, you not only have Belichick, you also have Ben Johnson going back to Detroit. So you're going to get, Jody takes phone calls, you take text messages, you're going to get text. Oh, we need Ben Johnson. If they're 2-2, we need Ben Johnson. We need Bill Belichick.
Right.
He created this environment.
Yeah, they did.
Environment to create.
Yeah, and I guess you can say, why would Sirianni agree to this? But what else was he going to do? Realistically, I think he was in a different spot than Doug, where I think Doug said, I don't need this. I'll take the year off and I'll get right back into it. I don't know that Sirianni has that fallback. He might be, I don't know, was he even getting a coordinator job? If he just said, you know what, I'm not doing this, I'm out. Is he getting coordinator job?
I'm amazed how many people don't think he'd get another head coaching job. Are you kidding me? 667, 3 consecutive playoff berths. Some of the dogs that get coaching jobs in this league, he might have had to sit out a year, and maybe he didn't want to because he's a young man. I don't even think he would accept a coordinator position because he's getting another head coaching job. Now, the timing, as I said, he might have had to sit out a year, and maybe he doesn't want to because he is a young man and he doesn't want to press pause on his career. So I can't speak directly to his thought process, but I'm a little surprised he went along with this. I am, because I think he's easily getting a second chance.
Yeah, see, that's where I guess we may disconnect a bit. And listen, his resume would suggest yes, but it's almost one of those things where these teams are thinking like, I don't know, like, did this guy get too much too fast and then just kind of crash? I mean, he's like the Wolf of Wall Street over here. Like, all of a sudden he's turning penny stocks over and making millions, and then it just came crashing down, and everyone's like, see, I knew that something was going on over there. Like, I feel like there's an element of the league doesn't buy what has happened here with Nick. And it's one of these things. It's like almost like the Eagles season. The role that he has had in their success, it feels that nobody can put their finger on. Like, why is Nick Sirianni? Like, when you talk about teams, well, they got a great head coach and he does this and this is why. And Sirianni just never seemed to get the credit for the good of this team. And that's the bizarre part about it, is what role did he have in this team's height? And did they hit the apex with him? And did other teams around the league, would they say, I'm not sure what role he had in all this, and I'm not sure he could ever get back there?
Yeah, I'm more with John on this one. I think if Dave Canales can get a head coaching job during this offseason,
Dave Canales,
are you telling me Nick Sirianni can't get a head coaching job if he strong-armed Eagles and said, no, I'm not going to?
Now, it took a while to add to Jody's point. Raheem Morris, this is a second opportunity.
Second job.
He's 21 and 38
third
as a head
job, right? Wasn't he interim too?
Interim,
yeah.
21 and 38 as a head coach. He's getting a second opportunity. Well, third opportunity, as Jody.
Well,
I don't count interim, but
I don't think that I think these teams do such a terrible job of identifying candidates. Like,
oh, so do I.
The idea of a guy was the play caller on a team that was a good defense. Okay, great. He has great talent. But what qualifies that guy because he's a good defensive play? He might be the best defensive play caller. What qualifies him to run the entire organization? I don't understand how someone looks at, Dan Quinn. Okay, you're a great defensive mind. Dallas has been okay. He got Atlanta to the Super Bowl, by the way. But do you really think that Dan Quinn is turning your organization around? Like, I don't understand how people identify certain coordinators and I love the thought of, well, he had a bad game in the NFC Championship game, and that's going to disqualify him. Like, one game is not what is making you, but sometimes it feels that it is. That's the point, is if a guy has a great, like Ben Johnson in the first half, this guy's going to be able to write his own check. Well, by the time that game ended,
he tried, by the way.
I'm not so sure that Ben Johnson has the audacity to ask for the kind of money he's asking for.
Yeah.
Well, the first half you thought he could.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, just to put a little preventative medicine out there for my calls, your texts, our stream comments here. When the Eagles get out 2-3 and you start screaming for we need Ben Johnson immediately, when was the last time a coach of any magnitude was hired in season? You want to run Siri out of town, that's fine. After week 5. Happening. So who do you want? Vic Fangio coaching the team for the final 11 games of the season next year? Somebody's got to take over the team. Ben Johnson's not going to walk off the Lions sideline as their offensive coordinator and become the Eagles head coach. Come on.
In theory, Bill would be available, though.
Do you think Bill Belichick joins the Eagles week 6?
No.
That's not happening either.
Right. When did somebody
get
fired in season, and then the guy who replaced him came from another organization that was currently – that's –
it can't happen. The lines aren't – the Ben Johnson stuff, you would have to have – I think Kellen Moore would be the interim more than Vic.
Kellen Moore is interesting because he was in L.A. this year. They needed an interim, and it wasn't him.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, by the way, these guys don't want interim jobs. And a lot of times they have to go 2-3 down the list because A, they're too loyal to the head coach who got fired, or, they don't want that interim stain, on them. And sometimes it can be a stain. Antonio Pierce was able to overcome it. But usually people don't look seriously.
And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, John, Kellen Moore interviewed for the head coaching job here in the Sirianni cycle. So, I guess the Eagles may say if something goes awry, Kellen, your opportunity's next. So, I mean, the whole thing is bizarre, but I will put this caveat on it. I actually am more optimistic than I feel like most people are about where
Cody's pretty optimistic too.
Oh, okay.
I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic of how this is going to shape.
This reminds me a lot of 2 years ago when they got in as a wild card. They were a little bit of now this team was supposed to do more, but everybody says like, why even make the playoffs? You're just going to, they went down there and they got whipped by Tampa.
Same team
2 years ago. And I think it was an eye-opener of, we made the playoffs. There's a difference between a playoff team and that next level. And they were really aggressive. I mean, they went out in the first day and got Reddick, and then they brought in Bradbury and traded for they traded for A.J. Brown and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They brought in they were really aggressive because they saw, hey, we're a playoff team, but there's a difference. And I think they made the playoffs this year and got whipped and realized – our expectations may have been here, but we're here. We want to get back to here. So we're going to go get Vic Fangio, let him bring in more guys. We're going to go get the guy we want on offense. So I think you're going to see a very aggressive offseason.
Well, that's I said that earlier in the show to Jody. I said, Howie better get to work because the way this works is to have better players than everybody else. Because if you're sort of a middling team and this typical NFL parity, one-score game can go either way, I don't think this is going well. So the only way to overcome this, to me, is put the best roster together, and then you win games.
And all intentions are necessary, but getting down to the nitty and the gritty of it, you got to have the cap flexibility to do so. And 2 years ago, when they were working with a rookie quarterback on the second year of a 4-year deal as a second-round draft pick, and Carson Wentz's dead cap money had already been absorbed, they had flexibility. They don't have near that flexibility this year. Now, there's a whole bunch of interesting factors about Jason Kelce's contract and Fletcher contract. So they got some guys. They can create it. But as of right now, they don't have that kind of flexibility where you can go out and trade for an A.J. Brown and know you're going to immediately do his deal and have the money to be able to get that done. I think Howie has the desire and has the motivation, but does he just have the ability to do it? Because I think they're more of a strap cap team going into this offseason.
There's also the element, and Jody, those are good points. And this is where, Roseman, it's Howie's season. He's the popular guy. And now there's starting to be some people questioning. I can see Howie just waiting for that moment to be like, I'm going to make that move. That's going to have everybody saying, how did he do it? It's Howie's season again. I would imagine he's just sitting and waiting for that date to be able to make that first move to just, get himself
March
back.
14th, by the way, the start of
March
the
14th
new league year. Yeah.
So I could just imagine him sitting there waiting for that opportunity for all the people who are starting to say things. He's missed a couple picks. We talked about it with John yesterday on my show. The revisionist draft history comes up quick.
Kyle Hamilton.
They could have had Brian Branch. Why not
Branch last year?
Davis? Yeah. Those kind of things. This is the kind of season for the revisionist draft history. So I can imagine Howie is just waiting for his opportunity to kind of re-win everybody back over as they're starting to drift a little bit.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. And I think Howie's a good GM. I don't think that's going to change. So I think the Eagles are well set up to have a good offseason. Everything comes down to decisions, obviously. And if you get things right with particular players, and there's a couple young players, everybody was excited. You talk about the revisionist history. Everybody was so excited about having all the Georgia guys. Now we hear, well, what happened to Nolan Smith? Can you believe in Nakobe Dean? Even Jordan Davis to a certain degree. I think everybody's still on board with Jalen Carter. I think, not positive, but all of a sudden, who's number 2? It might be Kaylee Ringo. He showed some signs as an outside corner late in the season. It's funny how quickly things turn. And that's a little bit unfair when you're talking about young players because people need some time to develop, and everybody develops at a different level. I'm not ready to give up on Nolan Smith. I'm not ready to give up on the Kobe Dean. Not ready to.
Do you feel better? Do you feel better about those younger guys getting a chance to work with Vic and his staff as opposed to Desai and his staff?
Yeah, I think Vic will. Look, if you're going to run the scheme, and I've said it to Jody a million times, I may have said it to you, Mike, 1,000,001 times. I don't like this scheme. I don't like it. I didn't like people say I like Gannon. I didn't like it when Gannon ran it. Jody can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. But if you're going to run the scheme, this is the guy you want running it.
Right.
So from that
perspective, and just the development of the players, can he get more out of certain guys than Desai was able to get? Those are the things that we'll have to find out as the season kind of progresses here. Why did Hassan Reddick's season seemingly take a step back?
But here's my question for both of you guys. And it's similar to what I said about players. You don't give up on players after a year. You might have to after 2 years, certainly after 3 years. You don't give up on him. To use an example, Nolan Smith, because he had a disappointing rookie season. I'm not giving up on him. I don't think the Eagles are giving up on him. We'll see how it shakes out. Why does Jeffrey Lurie not realize if you're going down the routes of young coaches, in this particular case, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, who you just mentioned, why does he not realize that learning on the job is kind of baked in to that decision-making?
I think there's a difference, though, between the player who is trying to learn from you and you're displaying that maybe that you need to learn how to teach. And you don't have a lot of time to see whether or not that guy, there was some reporting that Desai was a good play caller, but he was a little unsure of himself. Well, does he automatically gain that confidence? Like, he's been a coordinator.
Maybe after
he's been a coordinator. He's been on staffs. You would think like, hey, I'm here now. Why would I be unsure of myself if I've made it to this level and I've been a coordinator? By the way, Sean was in Chicago with Vic and eventually got that job after Vic left.
And by the way, one of the major reasons he got the Eagles job because Vic Fangio recommended him. That's a pretty good recommendation, by the way.
Maybe Vic knew that he would be inept and that he would be out.
I do not think that is the case. But.
Yeah, here's my answer to your question.
By the way, I don't think Desai was so inept. I'm in jest on that.
Nor do I. But here's my answer to John's question. These decisions as to when to move on from a guy and let him go in a job, whatever, not done in a vacuum. They're done. They are done in a vacuum with the expectations of what the team had done previously attached. So when Brian Johnson took over, he had to know, I'm taking a team over a team as the offense coordinator that was tied in the Super Bowl with 10 seconds to go. My growth period just got cut in half. I don't get the latitude of, yeah, we're building and it's a process and it's going to take time. No, they want you back in the Super Bowl next year, big guy. If you want to take the gig, you want to opt for the gig because Shane Steichen's going to go coach the Colts. Guess what? You got to hit the ground running. If you don't want it and say,
if that's your belief,
need a position to step into and be able to grow.
If you're not,
be the Carolina Panthers
but here's what I'm saying, Jody. If that's your belief, and you're the GM or the owner, and you have control, you're going to probably hire an experienced guy. I'm saying Shepard didn't hire experienced guys. I'm saying once he made the decision to hire these guys, why does he not understand that comes with consequences? And one of the consequences is they don't have experience, and they are going to learn on the job. My point is, why does he not know that? Why does he not know that and assume, oh, these guys are going to be fine, they're going to be seamless?
Well, see, I'll give you the answer, J Mac. This very break football guy gave me this stat. I think it was either last week or the week. How many coordinators have been in place in the same position in the National Football League in the last 3 years?
On offense, it's ridiculous. It's 2022, every single offensive coordinator. But
why are we singling out Jeffrey? Because he gets
some of these guys aren't getting fired; they're getting hired someplace else.
Yes. Some of it's good. Some of it's guys are getting promoted, like Shane Steichen.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I would say about the Eagles situation here: that Kellen Moore, I got to imagine. Listen, I know Brian. I think too. I agree with what you're saying, John. I think Brian Johnson. This was a really unique situation that I don't know that we'll ever see duplicated, where this team was 10-1, the number one seed, and then fell off so drastically that drastic changes had to happen. I think Johnson kind of ends up like, if you didn't see the games and just kind of talked about what happened, you would say, this guy got 11 wins, top 10 offense. He got a raw deal. He should have got another chance. Wow. But because of what happened, you would now have this. But here's what I think could be the next step. How many coordinators now is this for Nick Sirianni? And Kellen Moore, I got to imagine, is licking his chops to get this offense. Like, any coordinator in the league is going to say, you're giving me eight. This is a team that fired a coordinator.
He's going to get traded.
And you're going to give me A.J. Brown, Smith, Goddard, and Jalen Hurts. I'll take the job. And then he's going to get a head coaching job, and we're going to be going through the same conversation next year. Yeah. And it's, who's the quarterback coach? Do they want to give him the job? He has no play calling experience. That's the give and take that you're going to go through in this situation. You hire the veteran guy. He's going to walk into an offense, and this thing's going to explode next year, and he's going to get a head coaching job. Mark my words on that one.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's not necessarily a bad thing, other than if you don't believe in the head coach and, Kellen Moore is the guy who makes it explode, maybe you should have moved on from the head coach, which is kind of my point from Jeffrey. Jeffrey's decision-making doesn't make sense. I always say with the Eagles, typically doesn't always work out, but they typically make good decisions. I understand their decision-making process. typically. This time, I don't understand it a little bit. I don't understand it from and I've tried to look at every angle, and no, it's just reactionary. Oh, the young guys didn't perform, so I'm going to bring in a senior citizen and a guy who's been a coordinator for 5 years. I'm just going to go the other way. Oh, we don't use motion. I'm just going to use a guy who uses motion. Oh, we don't put the quarterback under center. Well, I'm going to use a guy who puts the quarterback on.
And John, that is where I go back to, how do we quantify the role Sirianni had in why this team had success? And there's got to be something behind closed doors, unless everyone just comes up with the obvious answer. Well, Sirianni's a puppet and they're running everything anyway. Or they say, this guy, you might not see it. He might not be the play caller, but there's something he's doing to these players, connecting with them, keeping them together. They like playing for him. He's whatever it is. Maybe that's the unquantifiable reason.
Emotional intelligence. That's the corporate buzzword that
there you
Jeffrey
go.
Talks
And
about.
Fresh ideas. I want the T-shirt. Fresh ideas.
And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on all of that stuff that he's going to be able to pull it together and be the culture creator and motivator, whatever. Here's my one concern about it. Sirianni became a damn good liar this year. I kind of trusted Nick Sirianni and everything he said from day one when he came and said, I don't know if I have control of the roster or not, and couldn't answer a question that he really needed an answer for. But I go, well, at least the guy's a straight shooter. He's not going to BS us. Oh, he became a stone cold liar this year. The whole
he grew up a little bit. He got a little bit more veteran to the job.
But here's the problem with that, Mike. Players aren't stupid. They know that. They can realize what's going on around them. And if you're going to be the culture guy, if you're going to be the motivating guy, if you're going to play, oh, by the way, you hire Vic Fangio, who, if ever there was a bad cop, it's Vic Fangio. And you have to play the good cop, the opposite role as the head coach. It's harder to be the good cop when the players go, oh, is he just bullshitting me? Is he throwing crap at the wall just like he did last year? Once you start down that road,
I don't think
you could lose your players.
But I, from my standpoint, I let Nick lie to us. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know that the players feel that. I think A.J. Brown came out and said he lied for us.
Yeah, he lied for us.
He made himself look like a fool for us, and that's the part of, we wonder, did he lose the team? Like I said after the game that Monday night they get blasted. The first question for Nick in my mind is, did the players quit on you, or was your team that unprepared? I mean, there's two options after watching that game. They either quit or your staff was that unprepared. And I don't know that they quit on him because they dislike him or don't want to play for him. So that's what I'm thinking the organization is saying. I think genuinely these guys like Nick. They want to play for Nick. But Nick, you need stronger guys around you. That was our formula to get to a Super Bowl. You let Shane run his side. You let John run his side, and you do what you do.
Now,
I don't know.
Now, yeah, we talk about revisionist history. At Mike Gill Show, by the way, follow Mike on X, 97.3, the Sports Bash in South Jersey. Listen today, 2 to 6. I'll be on there at 3-ish. The thing about that to me is if you talk about Nick Sirianni and how he's handled this situation, I do think I agree with you. The players like him and all that kind of stuff. It kind of turns on the fact that when you talk about Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, like that's revisionist. I mean, everybody hated Gannon. And now all of a sudden, they had such strong coordinators. And Shane, even that was revisionist history. The first year was, look, when he took over, people didn't even know he took over. And then when it became clear he took over, they had some good games and some bad games. They hadn't had A.J. Brown, who was the final piece of the puzzle. Even in 2022, you had the Indianapolis game, the Houston game. It wasn't all peaches and cream the whole way through. So there's a lot of revisionist history. They were young coordinators. In the case of Jonathan, first time, familiar. Shane had 1 year, basically. Same thing with these guys. They were given a little bit more time to grow, and they turned into what they turned into, and they're both head coaches in this league. I think deservedly so. Jeffrey went through that. Why didn't he know? I keep going back to it. Why?
Well, and you can make the argument, too, that John Gannon's first year, I mean, you could say, oh, this doesn't go so well. If he was being knee-jerk.
By the way, top 10 defense with Jannard Avery, at least statistically. Very similar to Brian Johnson, top 8 offense. It's almost like a carbon copy, but you flip.
And then the next year they go to the number 2. They break the record for sacks. Everybody, they go to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, look, I go back to the Sirianni. I mean, Fletcher Cox says, this is ridiculous. We're even having this conversation. Jason Kelce has spoke glowingly. I don't know how much stock we put into those guys' comments, but they are the leaders and veterans of the team with a lot of gray area whether they'll even be back or not. So maybe they're just giving him some praise on their way out the doors. Who knows? But to me, it feels like the organization understood the respect that Nick had from the players, but also was smart enough to understand he needs more adults in the room around him.
Yeah, maybe I'm just drinking the Eagle Kool-Aid here, but John, I don't have a problem with the way they handled this and firing both of the coordinators this year. I'll give an example that Mike Gill will understand. Mike Gill gets offered a larger market afternoon drive show because the guy who was in the afternoon drive show went to an even larger market and got a better gig. And the PD calls him in and says, we want to offer you the job, but we expect you to hold the ratings that the previous guy did, coming in off the street. Never did a show in this town before. We expect you, they're doing a 9 as a rating. We expect you to do 9 or at least 8.5. You got to keep it in the neighborhood. You really going to walk in and go, yeah, but I got to grow the show. It's going to take time. There are going to be growing pains. Everybody needs to build it from the ground up. No, you got to take the job and go, okay, yeah, I'll get the 9. And then when you come in and you get the 6, guess what? Thank you very much for showing up. Go back to your
I
smaller
understand. To that, I would say, I understand your thought process. But if I'm Jeffrey Lurie and that's my thought process, why is it your thought? That's my question. Why is it Jeffrey Lurie's thought process? Jeffrey Lurie should know better. Like if you were at Howard Stern in his prime, right, and you're expecting the next big thing to be Howard Stern when it comes to ratings, well, you're an idiot. It ain't going to happen. If Howard left for Sirius back in the day, guess what? You ain't replacing him. So that's kind of my point with Jeffrey Lurie. I get what you're saying. And by the way, if he put those standards on Brian Johnson and Brian Johnson accepted the job, understanding, oh, by the way, which I don't believe he did for half a second, Jeffrey Lurie says, you have to be the second best offense in the NFL. I don't believe he said that. My question isn't your expectations, Jody. It's why Jeffrey Lurie didn't understand he shouldn't have those expectations. That's my thought process, because he just went through it with Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. Literally just went through it.
And I also think what got Brian unfairly maybe was it wasn't that the offense had turnover. You were handed the same offense, and it dropped off. There's no question. Now, numerically, statistically, it said,
top dropped 10. Off. No question. It dropped off. Yeah.
There was certainly questions almost after every game, like, what is going on? What is happening? Now, you had that streak with A.J. Brown where you had 125 yards or more in like 6 straight games, but there wasn't a game where like Jalen Hurts just was like, wow. And you had 2 games with Swift, like week 2 and week 3 where they ran the ball really well. And then I don't know that he had a 100-yard game again the rest of the season. Like the fact that he had an offense that was smooth and went to this, was dynamic, and look at these guys. And he got the same group of them, and they just didn't seem the same. I think that worked again. It wasn't like he had to try to figure out how to install new guys and do things, and it dropped off. He essentially got handed the same thing and was like, what did you do to the brand new car we gave you?
All right, Mike Gill, we got to run, but I want to ask you one more question before we let you go. Will Jalen Hurts consult with Brian Johnson this week on the upcoming competitions in the Pro Bowl? Because Jalen Hurts got named yesterday. He's going to the Pro Bowl. Oh, my God, what an honor.
Just wait, but you see you got names on the AFC side at quarterback?
Yeah, Gardner
Minshew. Gardner Minshew is a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Brian Johnson got another interview.
Yeah, Tampa. He was probably in Tampa saying.
So
hey.
are Jalen and Brian going to be able to, they were like this, so close, it's going to work, two peas in a pod. They've known each other since he was in diapers. Blew up.
I feel those stories always seem to not end well. Like when your friend from like camp when you were a kid, you usually don't stay friends with that guy. Like you were friends as a young age, and then you get older, and you're like.
And I always say I think it was overblown. I think when Brian was 17 or whatever the hell he was, and he meant Jalen Hurts at 4, I don't think they were hanging out together. I think he tapped him on the head at practice and said, "Hey, how you doing, young child?" And went on his day.
Your buddy has a kid who's like 9 or 10,
exactly,
and he's like 23 years old. It's not like you're hanging out with that guy. It's like, hey, good to see you all grown up now.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing more overstated than that story was the importance of the Pro Bowl these days.
Oh.
Good job, Gardner. Gardner Minshew taking the band.
Gardner Minshew
Vegas
forever will be known as a Pro Bowl quarterback, which tells you what that honor.
Well, the guy last year from Baltimore that got the
backup quarterback.
That was the worst one of all time.
Yeah.
That's the worst one of all time. He played like 5 games.
Mike Gill, a pleasure, buddy. Thank you much. We'll talk to you next week.
See ya.
The hoodie's out. Mike Gill here with us on Birds 365. Hey, Birds fans, here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call managing partner, either Jim or Fran. You can get either one of them on the phone and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, managing partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, Then do what you usually do on a Sunday. Watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate Mike Gill doing his usual Wednesday thing with us here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen, Jody McDonald. As of yesterday, no new additions to the Eagles coaching staff. You knew the turnaround was coming. Nick Sirianni was going to be able to fend off the people with pitchforks at the gate and save his job by telling Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman what they wanted to hear, which is, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want with the staff. I can get it together with other guys. I think you've already answered this today, John. Who did I have? Oh, I had your buddy Ed Kratz on with me on WIP last night. And I asked him specifically, do you think less of Nick Sirianni because he didn't go down the Doug Peterson route? That he could have just said, and you and I both agreed, Mike Gill was on the other side, that I don't know if Nick Sirianni gets another job in the NFL as head coach. You and I both do. The collapse of this year will at some point fade a little bit going forward, and people are going to get out in the books and go, wait a minute, he's got a 667 winning percentage, and he took a team to a Super Bowl in his second year as head coach. That's going to get him another gig. Yeah, might have to show a little patience, but do you think less of Sirianni because he folded tent and said, yes, Jeffrey, yes, Howie, whatever you guys need, just please keep me on as the head coach?
No, I don't, because I understand the industry and most of the coaches do. And I always say it's a very nomadic profession. So they all understand these things tend to happen. And, look at Nick himself, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Indianapolis, Philadelphia. He's only 42 years old, and that doesn't even count the college stuff, Mount Union, IUP before that. Spot to spot to spot. That's more common than the opposite. So part of the profession. So I don't blame him. He's made a lot of money. Now he's got a big family. That's part of it. Again, he's making a lot of money. He could walk away and take a season off, but the difference between him and guys who've done that, Mike McCarthy most recently, Bill Belichick looks like he's going to do that. They're older. He's 42 years old, 41, 40, somewhere in that range. Does he want to press pause? I don't think so. I think that's the difference. Even Doug, as an older coach, not as old as those guys, but sort of in between. I don't think he wants to do it at this stage of his career, just press pause. So I get that part of it. Me personally, I would have walked away. But I don't think less of, in other words, if you already gave me $21 million, so I have that, I'm saying if I'm in that process, I personally, but I'm not going to look at Nick Sirianni and say, oh, because I would have done it, you should do it. I don't think that's fair either.
It's funny because I might have done it as well, but for a different reason than you. How old is Nick?
42. I think I'll double check. 41 or 42.
41, 42. And I get a year to get paid the same amount to not
42.
coach.
42.
42. I get to spend a year with my kids and hang out at home and maybe work on my golf. I don't know if Sirianni plays golf at all. so many coaches do. They get obsessed with that crap. I'm not a golfer, so I don't quite understand it, but I get a year to relax. Now, there are strings attached. Maybe Gill's right, McDonald and McMullen are wrong, and he never gets that call and never gets that chance again.
I can't even imagine that. I honestly can't imagine that. I really can't.
No,
I mean,
nor do I, but stranger things have happened, John. You and I agree he's going to get out of good, but sometimes we're wrong.
No, I'm wrong all the time. But boy, the way this league works, I just can't even envision it. You'd have to do some really mudslinging behind the scenes for this guy not to get another chance after what he's been able to do in these 3 consecutive seasons. That part of it, I don't even worry about. He'll get a second chance. And just knowing how this league works, and we just saw it, basically it's 6 guys. Everybody interviews the same 6 guys. And with that, none of them have a 667 winning percent. He's top 10. You did the list. I don't think he still is because
that was before a couple late season losses. Yeah. He came down a couple.
But I mean, think about that, Jody. Think about that. Top 10. He was top 10
all time.
All time.
Yes.
This is astonishing to me that we're even in this position. And it really is.
Here's where you and I are a little different. Maybe just because I'm a lazy bastard. Yeah, I'll sit at home for a year. I'm getting paid. Oh, by the way, his contract guaranteed. If the Eagles and he agree, see you later, bye, because he won't change his coaching staff, guess what? He was fired. And when you are fired, you get to cash your checks, which means he's got $7 million coming in this upcoming year to do nothing. I would have I'd read. I'd get a new library card and I'd go take dancing lessons. I'd do whatever the hell I had to do to kill 24 hours a day. I'm cashing for $7 million. I'm on the phone networking for my job the next time. I had no problems walking away and getting paid $7 million.
Here's another difference from being 42 and 62. Nick has very young kids.
Yeah, you get to spend time with your kids. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Well, sometimes they drive you crazy. So sometimes you want to get away for a little bit as well. So I think that factors into it as well. And he loves football. He truly loves the game. And I think he wants to be around the game. So I think, I'm with you. Let me take some time off. Let me relax. People as driven as he is, they don't want to relax. They want to be around the game and they want to do it. And for them, that's fun. And that grind is fun. So some of the reasons, but I that's why I don't. Everybody's different. Everybody's at a different point in life. Everybody's got different problems, different hurdles, different things they got to deal with. So if Jeffrey came to me and I was in this position and I already made $21 million and he said, you got to fire a bunch of people you really like and really respect and really develop relationships to, I would have walked away. But I can't put that same thought process on somebody else because they have a different situation and everybody's got a different situation.
And yes, I am attempting to, in my own mind, run it back 20 years ago. And what would I have done at age 42? At age 62? Oh yeah, I'm checking out. I'm going to bet the ponies. I'm going to get down the shore a little bit earlier. I have no problems readjusting my life schedule to get paid to not work. But at 42, would I have been the same? Yeah, I think so. That's just me. I'm a lazy SOB. All right, quickie timeout. Come back. I see we got Clark Judge, our buddy from Talk of Fame and the iTest podcast, coming up to talk mostly about the upcoming Super Bowl, but also being part of the Hall of Fame selection committee. That's coming up too. Good stuff we've got coming up with Clark Judge next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. We got one of our favorite guests. He joins us about every couple of months. Host on Talk of Fame and writer as well for them. Host of the Eye Test for Two podcast, which is an outstanding football podcast. Our buddy Clark Judge joins us on Birds 365. Clark, I want to start here. My partner John McMullen will confirm the fact that I am a Brock Purdy fanboy and have been since he did what he did last year. And I've actually compared him to that Montana guy who was a pretty good quarterback in his day. Was I mistaken? Should I have been comparing him to Steve Young with the plays that he's made with his legs the last couple of weeks? I got the wrong Super Bowl winning quarterback in 49-year history to compare to Brock Purdy. He's more Steve Young than Joe Montana, is he not?
He might be more Steve Young than Joe Montana, but he's neither. I mean, those are Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, no, I covered both those guys. Montana was special. Steve Young was special. Steve Young is on a whole different plane. I mean, it's funny when I see people talk about, we've never seen quarterbacks like this and quarterbacks who can run. Steve Young could run. He was a running back. He was tremendous. And last week, Lamar Jackson throws that pass that's batted to the line of scrimmage, right? And it's caught by Lamar Jackson. And I saw people on the Twitter going, "We've never seen this before."
Yeah,
guys,
Steve did it.
He did it against the Eagles.
I saw Brad Johnson do that too back in the day.
Yeah,
right?
Steve Young did it. I think it was a playoff game out at Candlestick, and Steve caught it and ran towards the goal line. So yeah, I mean those things happen. But Brock Purdy's better than people know. He's not Joe Montana or Steve Young, not yet, and that's a long way. That's a long leap, but it's so far so good. I'm really pleased with what he's doing in Zora Day.
Well, I want Clark Judge's eye test on Patrick Mahomes because that guy. Now, it's still a small sample size, but it's getting awful close to be him being in the conversation. We're talking 6 consecutive championship games, going back to another Super Bowl. I mean, this guy is unbelievable, Clark. Where is he on the pantheon this quick in his career?
Well, I mean, he's rising quickly, as you mentioned. In terms of history, his career is not even half over, so it's hard to comment on that. But he's doing things that we seldom see. I don't like this. We've never seen it. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm just talking about people out there in social media. We've never seen this before. I think I've mentioned on this broadcast before. And I saw something last night, as a matter of fact, somebody said, we've never seen this before. And they were showing a video of him rolling right against Baltimore, I think 5 years ago, throwing deep to Tyreek Hill about 50 yards down the field. Never seen this before. I don't like commenting on that stuff. I don't. But I sort of felt like I've got to wade in here. And I said, I saw it. I saw John Elway do this.
Yeah, John.
I mean, so I saw, and so we have. And he's remarkable. He's really, really good. He's really talented. And that team is really good. But after last weekend, they were talking about the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, he's a great quarterback. There's no question. He didn't win that game. The defense won that game. They didn't put a point on the board in the second half. Correct. So I'm not here to criticize him, not at all. I mean, he's a tremendous player, and he's the best in the business today. But, when he went toe-to-toe with Josh Allen, I thought Josh Allen was right there with him. The difference is Josh Allen doesn't win those big games. He does. And that to me is sort of the intangible. Mahomes knows what it is. It's just Montana, 4-0 in Super Bowls. There's certain guys, Brady, certain guys that know how to step up when it's needed. I thought about Larry Bird, in the NBA, Michael Jordan. They want the ball, and because they know they can succeed. And I think this is the story with Mahomes. That's what I think sets him apart.
Now, I've made this point on this show, other shows that I've done for years running now, and I still cannot wrap my head around what I think is a acceptable answer from you, Clark Judge, or John McMullen, or everybody. Nobody's answered it to my satisfaction, but I'm going to give you a shot. That Kelce guy is pretty good too. As great as Mahomes is, tying Jerry Rice for all-time records, and that's pretty damn good. And it just boggles my mind that he had the one catch over Kyle Hamilton where it was a perfect throw, perfect catch, perfect defense. Kyle Hamilton couldn't make a better play on the ball than he did. It just, you got beat by a guy by this much who was that much better. That I give him credit for. That's completely understandable.
I know where you're going.
How the hell does he get so wide open? The ball's coming his way. He's Patrick Mahomes' first choice basically on every single play. Yet they throw it to him and there's no defensive play in the picture. How do you not know the ball is going to Travis Kelce? It just boggles my mind every single time he gets a catch, and there's no defensive player in sight. How is Kelce / the Chiefs / Andy Reid doing this? Do they know?
I wish you were around here when I watch those telecasts, because I'm yelling the same thing, and my wife says, "Turn it off. I've heard enough." And I said, why don't you just double team him and say, okay, I'll be beaten by any one of these other guys, Rice, Scantling, Valdez, Scantling. I'll be beaten by I'll be beaten by any of that, but I'm not going to be beaten by this guy. I'll double him. Now, Kyle Hamilton, honestly, I thought did a pretty good job. I actually thought he did, but the fact of the matter is, he had 11 catches and something like 9 or 10 in the first half. You've got to say something's going amiss here, because what he's doing is he's sitting down in zones. And he's wide open. There's no one within 5 or 10 yards. How is that possible? How are we leaving this guy so wide open? And I don't know the answer to that, because all these defensive coordinators don't seem to be able to figure it out. I mean, he's always there. So it's, I guess, the greatness of Reid, the greatness of Mahomes and Kelce. But I'll tell you what, if I were the defensive coordinator, and I thought Baltimore did that in the second half, they said, we're not going to be beaten by this guy. I don't care if it's somebody else, not this guy. In the second half, he really did nothing.
All right, since we're on the greatness tangent, we got two of 3, Clark, but we're missing the third. The third to me is Andy Reid.
Oh yeah,
we're at 20. I think we're at 25 years. Andy Reid, 19 playoff appearances, I believe. I had so many I can't even keep the championship game straight.
11.
And now 11. 11. That is unbelievable.
It's staggering. I mean, well, go ahead, John.
The consistency. Where is he in your thought process, and obviously different generations, but in this particular generation where you have free agency and you have such turnover, and a big part of it is Patrick Mahomes and getting with a great quarterback. We understand that, but Andy was here for 14 years. He always made the playoffs, didn't get over the top, but the consistency has always been there. What can you say about Andy Reid?
Well, I think you said it all. I mean, people before this year and even during this year talk about Belichick as being the greatest today and maybe the greatest ever. And I've sort of waffled on that because I go, I'm one of those that says, when you had Brady, yeah, he's great without Brady. But to go at Andy Reid with Mahomes, yeah, he's great. Okay, in Philadelphia, didn't make a difference who was quarterback. Now, Donovan was there for much of the time, but he won a zillion games there. There's something with Andy Reid that really seems to work. So in terms of a coach today, who would I take? He'd be the top guy. I'd take him over Belichick. I really would today. That's not to say I'm saying he's better than Belichick or anything like that, but Belichick certainly has the rings. But Tom Brady has those rings too. Andy Reid took the Eagles to the Super Bowl, and he's taken the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, and you see the success he's having now.
And it's Tree as well.
No question.
He's beaten his guy, John Harbaugh. You think about Sean McDermott. Super Bowl winners, Doug here.
Right. That's right.
And John won a Super Bowl. Ron Rivera has been a great coach. Yeah. So many, even the Childerses of the world, the Leslie Frazier's, the Pat Shermers, Todd Bowles is an Andy Reid guy at one point.
Yep.
Matt Nagy, so many. That's
probably the difference, John. I mean, look, the Belichick tree, you go, where have they gone? By and large, haven't been all that successful. And again, I'm not here to criticize Bill Belichick, but Andy Reid seems to work wherever he is and whoever he's working with. So that's what I love about it.
But let me see if I can get you to criticize Bill Belichick once. They move off the Belichick and Patriot relationship, and I think both sides handled it pretty well. I thought it could have been much more sloppy, and they didn't. They did a nice job of saying, "Hey, best of luck, the greatest ever." Blah, blah, blah. We're just going to start a new era. But Belichick didn't get a job, and there were a bunch of openings around the National Football League, and he only had one official interview, and he had two of them with Atlanta, and they chose to go with a retreading Raheem Morris, who I know is very well respected and a great defensive coordinator, but he did take his swing and a miss at head coach, and now he's going to get another one. Did Belichick not get a head coaching job this offseason because of the faltering with New England at the end, the fact that he is 72 years old, or the fact that he came in and said, I'm still Bill Belichick, and here's the way the organization is going to be set up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'll let someone else do this, but I need this, that, and the other thing. Do you think that's why teams passed on him, because they weren't ready to do that with a guy like Belichick, no matter what his resume said?
Yeah, I think what happened was that Bill Belichick, the GM, got in the way of Bill Belichick, the coach. That's what I think happened. And so when you take him on, despite the fact that at the end of his run in New England, he said, I'm still willing to work with people. I'm willing to listen to people and work with them in the draft and personnel. I think most clubs understood the situation. You take on Bill Belichick, he's going to be a control freak. And that's what's made him successful in New England. Mm-hmm. What didn't make him all that successful were some of those draft picks. I mean, he didn't do very well in a lot of areas, particularly with a wide receiver. And honestly, at the end, Tom Brady was carrying that team. I think we all knew that. And the more and more the Brady shouldered the load, the more he felt the pressure and the team felt the pressure, but they still managed to go forward. And when Brady left, I think people felt like, okay, now we're going to find out. Well, what we found out was the next year Brady won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. Belichick didn't do anything. That's not to say that, it's all Brady. When they first started out, it was a nice relationship with more Belichick than was Brady. At the end, it was more Brady than was Belichick. So I think what happened there is sort of scared people off. Listen, Jody, the guys have been hired are kind of half his age. Most of those guys, they're looking for the young up-and-coming guy. This is not a young and up-and-coming guy. Why is Pete Carroll still out there? Pete Carroll's made it clear he wants to coach. Made it clear. I don't hear any interest for Pete Carroll. He made it clear from the Chargers.
No.
There's
a lot of ageism out there, Clark, and Pete's the most energetic 70-year-old guy you're going to see, but he is 70 years old. 72. I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit, but you're one of the few people that will get this name. We all talk, and look, Tom Brady, we all know Tom Brady's the greatest of all time. That's the biggest part of it.
Modern era.
How much do you think losing Ernie Adams hurt Bill Belichick?
I think that was a big loss. Yeah. I think that was a big loss. And people close to that franchise would tell you that as well. But when people kept sort of leaving there and disappearing and going elsewhere, he was left to his own devices. And by and large, it worked. I mean, it worked. But it worked because you had a special quarterback, too. And yeah, you're right about Ernie Adams. He was invaluable to them and to him, to Bill Belichick. But it lasted for an inordinate amount of time. And I don't think we'll ever see that replicated. I don't. Even in Kansas City, I think what you're going to see now is, honestly, they're going to be challenged within their division, which they haven't been. Jim Harbaugh is going to turn the Chargers around. I will guarantee you that. Not because I cover the Chargers, but because I know what he did in San Francisco there. I know what he did at USD. I know what he did at Stanford, and I know what he did in Michigan. And I was in and around some of those teams, and he's got his own issues. He's a different guy, but you can get along with him, and he'll get that team turned around, and they'll push Kansas City. And also, I mean, so you look at New England, that's 20 years of success. I mean, 20 years in the salary cap here, it's unheard of. So anyway, in answer to your question, yeah, it was a loss. It was a big loss.
All right, I got to follow up here, and I readily acknowledge you are a much more informed NFL football historian than yours truly. When you said, Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, modern era.
Yeah.
Who in any era is on the level of
Otto? Are you going Otto on?
Yeah. I'd go Otto. And I saw Unitas. And so I'd never seen anything like Unitas. And my father said, how about Otto Graham? I went, who? I went, Otto Graham. And then I looked him up 10 years. He plays 10 years, 10 championship games, 7 victories.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I'm pretty good. You know, you're in a championship game every year, and you retire the year you're the league MVP. I mean, come on, you can't do better than that, right? But he's not on ESPN. We don't have video of it. It's a different era, and so people just minimize. Otto Graham was a great quarterback. I saw Unitas. Unitas was a great quarterback because when he had the ball at the end, he didn't stand a chance. And United, they called their own plays. It was different game, guys, and that's what. It's so tough, and you would understand. I'm not trying to call you out on ageism, but because you're older like I am, you've seen and understood these things, and you watch the game, the 60s, 70s, maybe the 70s and 80s, and it's changed. And it's never been easier to play quarterback than it is today.
That's true. That's very true.
But I'm not saying it's an easy position, but it's never been easier. You watch when we put Chris Hamburger in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, they showed 5 videos of him. 5, all right? Each one of them, he took the quarterback's head off. Each one of them, he'd be flagged 15 yards. You breathe on a quarterback today, and you're let off in handcuffs. So what happens is that was also a vertical passing game. Watch some of the throws Unitas makes down the field. I'm on the mark. Today, if I pitch a ball to you 2 feet in front of me, which is done a lot in offenses, including Kansas City, it's a forward pass. It's a completion. So these completion percentages are out of sight. The completion, the touchdowns versus interceptions are out of sight. And you look at passing, go Terry Bradshaw, where he had like 2 more touchdown passes and interceptions. Yeah, it's a different game. It's a different game. Look at how they.
You're preaching to the choir, Clark. I try to tell people. I try to tell people to judge people in their era. Ken Stabler had more.
Judge him in their era.
Yeah, Ken Stabler had more interceptions and touchdown passes. Yeah. So
and so did Namath. And also, John, if you crossed the middle of the field, you crossed it at your own risk. You had Jack Tatum waiting there. You had Jack Lambert waiting there. You had George Atkinson. You had later Steve Atwater. They take your head off. I mean, so they changed the game for the right reasons. I understand that, but vastly, vastly different game.
Yeah. And by the way, I give Tom a lot of credit. Tom Brady said, "Look, it's not. It shouldn't be the defensive player's responsibility to protect the offensive players. That's my responsibility. If I'm going to throw the ball, that's my responsibility as a quarterback to not put my receiver in harm's way." Nobody thinks that way anymore. Tom might be the last to think that way because everybody looks for the flag. It's a completely different game.
John, it's funny you mentioned that. When I was covering the 49ers the first year was 1994, and they won the Super Bowl that year. I remember being on the practice field with Dwight Clark, who was then in the front office. and working with the general manager, John McVay. And we had a long conversation, and we were talking about Montana. And he said the thing that separated Montana from everyone else was he put the ball in a position where you wouldn't get hurt. And he said he would not lead you into a bone-crushing tackle or an incompletion where you get wiped out. He said he always put the ball in a position, could be behind you, but he did it so that you wouldn't get blasted. And I'd never heard that before. And that was a long time ago. But as I watched videos later, I went, he was right. He was right.
Well, I always think of guys. I always remember Jody's a baseball guy, you know, so he knows there's certain numbers, 714, 755. We all knew, and even in football. I remember when Joe Montana retired, Clark, 92.3, 92.3. Yeah. Always stuck with me. That's his passer rating. Now that's an average season.
Not
in
even
the NFL. Now it was astronomical at the time. And now it's like, oh, you had a decent year. That's how drastically things have changed.
Look at the Unitas passer rating. I think he ranks something like 87th all time. You go, hey, different game. I mean, you watch this guy play and watching that era, as you said, judge them versus their peers. That's the way I measure those guys.
All right, Mr. Clark, I have a Hall of Fame question for you. You guys trimmed it down to just the finalists, and they'll be the ones who are going to be considered coming up.
Yeah.
Before you get there, are you instructed by anyone to treat this as if it's a jury room, that you are sequestered, that you're not allowed to consult with any of your other fellow jurists until you get into that room? Or can you converse, text, email, call on the phone, any other guys, just either pick their brains or do some pre-final meeting lobbying?
You're not only not forbidden from texting, calling, emailing colleagues, you're encouraged to. You actually are encouraged to try to get a dialogue so that when you go into that room, you all kind of understand each other. And that's what happens. It's not say that it happens a lot, but I would say in the week before, I talk to guys daily about different candidates and what they think and where they're going with it, and potential hangups and how they would address it, or how I would address it if I were presenting that candidate. So yeah, it's actually encouraged.
Yeah. That's good. Well, one of our buddies, Paul Domowitch, is going to tell you, Clark Judge, that Eric Allen should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't want you to go up or down, but give us your thoughts on Eric Allen as a potential Hall of Fame.
He's the most intriguing guy in this class to me for this reason. He's in his 18th year of eligibility, and when you're a modern era candidate, you have 20 years of eligibility. So the fact that he's in his 18th year for the first time,
as a finalist,
as a finalist, that sort of opened your eyes as to, wait a minute, why is this happening? And it's happened before. We had Joe Jacoby, who was in a finalist for the first time in his 18th year of eligibility. What have we missed with this guy? Why is he suddenly coming up now? And you saw last year when we had Albert Lewis in his 20th, and last year modern era eligibility, first time. How we miss this guy? And then he makes it to the top 10. You almost made it last year. Yeah. So that's why he's interesting to me. You look at the interceptions, and I think it was 54 career interceptions. He's tied with 2 Hall of Famers. The Pro Bowls, the All Pros, everything works there. Everything you go, what are we missing here? I mean, there's got to be a reason that we've missed on Eric Allen. And I know how effusive his opponents are. Troy Aikman, as you saw something he said about him. Yeah. One most tough, most
Phil Simms as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Phil
are we
Simms,
talking
one of those
to
difficult
about?
guys.
Yeah.
And then, don't throw in his direction because he's going to get the ball. I mean, just don't throw it in his direction. He'll intercept the ball. So that resonates with you. The question going in is, what have we missed? Why do we keep passing this guy? And the reason it's interesting, most intriguing guy to me, is because with 18 years, you go, he's essentially got 3 years left, including this year. 3 years left. So that's not a lot of time. There's some guys who sit there for a while. Kevin Green, the ranked 3rd all time in sacks, right?
Yeah.
3rd all time.
Yeah.
He got elected in his 12th year of eligibility. 12th year.
Yeah.
I mean, like, whoa. So the clock is ticking. And Eric Allen, I'll be frank with you, I don't think will make it this year. I'm curious to see where he goes. In case in the top 15, that's good. That's an honor. Can he make it to the top 10? If you can make it to the top 10, you're in the on-deck circle for the next year. So that should be critical for him in the next 3 years. If he can't make it this year, okay, no problem. But let's see what happens next year. Can he go in the top 10 or possibly into the top 5? But yeah, is he Hall of Fame worthy? Absolutely.
Appreciate your opinion on Eric Allen, even though we hope you're wrong that he does get in. He deserves to be in. That's deserved to be in for
I'm 1 of 50.
years.
I'm 1 of 50, Joe.
That's just me. Give us your opinion on the contributors as well, because that's become a really fun and interesting topic of the coaches and everybody else. And I think you guys have done a good job. I think that's one decision that the Hall of Fame has gotten right, that a different way to look at it and a different way to add guys who, in my opinion, are Hall of Famers, and everybody's got varying opinions on that as well. What do you think about this year's list?
Well, we've got a coach contributor category now. It's no longer contributor separate, no longer coach.
That's
separate.
what I meant. Slash.
Yeah. So this year it's Buddy Parker, and I think I've spoken to you before about Buddy Parker. I couldn't be happier with him as a candidate. I think he's so worthy. But
now here, let me just quickly interrupt. Does what the Lions did this year help Buddy Parker?
Yeah, it does, because it drew attention to the fact that they hadn't.
His name is coming up. They haven't been there since Buddy Parker. Should give you a lift on pushing your Buddy Parker candidate.
But you know what I've said before, and I'll say it again. And I brought this up at the meeting a year ago. Is that Buddy Parker? If you look at it, you look at his record. You go, Buddy Parker did everything Jimmy Johnson did. We put Jimmy Johnson in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He did everything Jimmy Johnson did. So he's Jimmy Johnson, except he's better. He won more games. He had a higher winning percentage. He went to more championship games. And guess what? Against Paul Brown, when he was with the Lions, Paul Brown, who some consider the greatest coach ever, it's 4-1 against him, including 2-1 in championship games. What are we missing here? Yeah. How has he been able to sit out this long? And I've been so passionate about this guy that I can't understand what happened when we had the Centennial Committee. We put in Jimmy Johnson and we put in Bill Cowher. Okay, fine, that's fine. But you go, Jimmy Johnson won 2 Super Bowls, all right? Well, Buddy Parker essentially won 2 Super Bowls. They were called NFL championship games. He went to 3 of them. He set up the 4th one in 1957 when he got Tobin Road and then left the team just before the season started over a salary dispute and also because of something with the players. But he left, all right? So he essentially did what Jimmy Johnson did. He won to himself.
Jimmy Johnson, right.
Yeah, and then he set up another team. And then they didn't win. They didn't win for till this year. They got conference championship game, but they didn't win one playoff game other than that one in 1991. So you looked at over 60 years of that. He must have been doing something right. We goes on to Pittsburgh. And he took a franchise that was awful, hadn't won. I don't think he had a winning season like the previous 7 years, and then afterwards they had like 7 years of just awful. Like 30% victory percentage, something like that. I've got all the numbers somewhere. But in that period, they had a winning. He was like 51-47-2 or something. But he was successful. He had done that. He'd done what he was brought in there to do. And yet we've somehow ignored this guy, and I'm not sure why. But it's time that he gets some attention. And finally, he has. I don't know what his chances are. I know there's some people that are going to stand up against him, and I'd like to hear what they have to say. But guys, I've said to you before, I really felt this is somebody who really got lost in history. And I've said also to you before, because I'm preaching to Philadelphia, Al Wistert is the other guy I don't understand. If he were a Hall of Fame candidate today, 9 years, 8-time All-Pro, all-decade team, 2-time NFL champion, what are we missing here? What are we missing? And I said to people, if he were a candidate today, he's first ballot Hall of Famer. He can't even get a sniff. He can't get a sniff because he's been forgotten. And the same thing with Buddy Parker. He's been forgotten, so we moved on.
At Clark Judge, TOF or Talk of Fame, make sure you follow him on X. Jody knows I love these segments. I love talking to Clark. I love the history of this game. Nobody knows it better than Clark Judge, so make sure you check him out, the Eye Test for 2 podcast. Let's talk about 2 guys who haven't been lost to history, the 2 first-timers. I'll end it there. Antonio Gates, Julius Peppers, slam dunks, both going in.
I would think so. I would think so. Julius Peppers, I mean, all decade, 2 decades. So he's the best in his position, 20 years. I mean, okay. And he's 4th all-time sack list. He's only half a sack behind Kevin Green. Okay, I don't know what we're looking for. Let's just pass. Let's move on. Antonio Gates, there's one stat in this whole group that resonates with me. One stat. That's 116. That's the number of touchdown passes that Antonio Gates caught in his career. It's more than any tight end ever. We were talking about Kelce earlier. Antonio Gates has more touchdown passes than any tight end ever, including Tony Gonzalez, who, by the way, was a first ballot choice in 2019. So I would think that would make him a first ballot choice. Again, I've heard some people say, we can wait on him, and I'm talking about Gates. Okay, but who are we going to promote at his expense? And we've been really eager in the past to promote first ballot choices. I'm not one of those guys that feels that way. I think they've got to be first ballot worthy. But I look at this and I say, well, we put Gonzalez in. Why wouldn't we put Antonio Gates in? I mean, he's got more career touchdown passes, and I think he had more Pro Bowls. I think he had 8th, and most of the guys, if not all the guys, with the exception, I think all the guys on this list. But in the thing that's interesting to me, we know on this ballot we have 3 wide receivers, the logjam of wide receivers. Yeah. Antonio Gates not only has more touchdown passes than each of them, he has a lot more than each
how
of
much,
them.
How much do those log jams hurt? Because I know Jared Allen. I'm a big Jared Allen guy. He's been a finalist. I don't know, 4 times or so. But Julius Peppers, in my estimation, he's going to wait again because Peppers is going to go in. Do I put too much weight on, 2 edge rushers, 2 receivers?
No. I mean, what has happened in the past is people have said, how difficult is it for a guy to go to his position if they're another person who's equally as good, or 2 others who are at his position who are vying for that spot? To me, it doesn't hurt them, because you look at 6 of the last 7 years, we put in 2 players at one position. 6 of the last 7, including in 2018, I think it was, we put in 2 at 2 positions. We had Urlacher and Ray Lewis at linebacker, and we had Owens and Moss at wide receiver in the same class. So it didn't bother them. And, you go back to 2017, we had Davis and LaDainian Thomas, and you just keep going down the list. So here, with the wide receivers, the problem here with the wide receivers, we have 3, Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne. None has really separated himself, in this course of discussion. And at some point, somebody has to. And the feeling coming out of the meetings last year was, we've got to promote somebody, which I don't quite understand. I'd say we've got to promote somebody if he's worthy. If they're not, I'd toss all 3. Instead of just keeping them around and bringing them back each year. I think the most worthy is Andre Johnson, to be honest with you. All 3 have Hall of Fame credentials, but if they keep sitting there must be a reason. And Andre Johnson, to me, I would say would be the most worthy, only because he played with a franchise where they didn't have great quarterbacks. He wasn't the second receiver, as the go-to guy, and he excelled. And I think there was something special about him. But that remains to be seen. But in answer to your question, Jody, it's a good one. No, you're not penalized because you're playing the same position as somebody else who might be equally as good.
Fair enough. Last thing, we'll let you go. Will a 49er team not covered day in and day out by Clark Judge win a Super Bowl here in 2024?
Well, I've given up with Kansas City. I thought Kansas City would have lost a couple games ago. It's just, the funny thing with me, it's just that I watched them play some of these opponents. The last weekend was the height of it. I don't understand some of the things we were talking earlier, Jody and John, about the failure to cover Kelce more than they do. But you go in as Baltimore, and you've got the number 1 rushing team against a team that really can't stop the run. I mean, Buffalo gashed him for 182 yards the previous week. So what do? You have Lamar Jackson throw or try to throw 41 times, and you give your running backs 6 carries?
6 carries.
What is going on with that? I mean, I was like, during the game, I kept saying, what are you guys doing? I mean, Lamar Jackson's not a pocket passer. We know he's most dangerous outside the pocket, especially with his legs. But so I don't know what San Francisco's got cooked up. I will tell you this. They don't stop the run very well. Last 2 games, they've been gashed by running backs. So to me, the X factor in this game is not Mahomes. I think it's Pacheco. I mean, I think Pacheco could run for 200 yards against these guys. They haven't been able to stop the run. So I would hope they've got something to prove here. I'd love to get behind it, but I'm not going to, because I've just seen this play too many times with Kansas City. Last year, I thought the Eagles were the team to beat. I did, and they weren't, as it turns out. I thought San Francisco was the team to beat going into this year. And I thought Baltimore and San Francisco just seemed to be a slam dunk. Let's just get to the finish. And we saw what happened last week. For some reason, some teams when they play the Chiefs, take stupid pills, and they just don't do what you go. I think we should. This is what we should be doing.
Don't say that around McMullen. He's got Shanahan on a pedestal.
I think Kyle's great, but I don't think he's Andy Reid.
He's not Andy Reid. And John, this is an interesting thing because I've got a sensitive issue about this with Kyle Shanahan. I covered his dad, who was the offensive coordinator of that 94 team. I've got worlds of respect for both he and his father. But with Kyle Shanahan, he was the offensive coordinator in the Super Bowl. That was the 28-3 Atlanta Super Bowl. When you should be running the ball, he's throwing it. Okay? Now he's the head coach in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. Got a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. When you should be running the ball, he's throwing it. You've got to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
And hopefully he will this time. And my point after this game is when they were talking about we've got to finish. We have unfinished business. The unfinished business to me is more about him than it is the 49ers. You've got a chance to redeem yourself now. You've demonstrated in 2 Super Bowls, you don't really have what it takes to close it, all right? So you can prove now that you can close it. But I don't know they can because he just seems he's a great strategist. He's innovative. A lot of teams have copied what he's doing. I think he's wonderful in what he does the offense. But can he close a deal? And he hasn't so far. That's the issue for me now.
Just a quick, and this is I reserve the right to change my mind. You can do the same, John. You can do the same, Clark. He's got McCaffrey this time. He didn't have McCaffrey in Atlanta. He had McCaffrey with San Francisco a couple of years ago. He's got the best running back in the NFL, and I don't think he'll shirk him this time if he's protecting a lead in the game. But he's got to get the lead because he's played from behind 2 weeks running now.
You didn't have to have McCaffrey when you have 28-3 late in the third.
Scoreboard makes a little difference. You're right.
The Julio Jones catch would be one of the most iconic in that Super Bowl plays in NFL history if he just would have laid up and kicked the field goal and just took the win.
John, you had 3rd and 1, right? They give the ball to Freeman. Instead, he decides, he's going to throw it, and he gets not only sacked but strip sacked, and we know what happened now.
Yeah.
Mr. Judge, always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy your Hall of Fame duties coming up, and then enjoy the bowl itself. Always.
Yeah, fun. You guys got me worked up. Now I got to pack myself nice after that Buddy Parker conversation. Wow, I got to towel off here. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Clark.
Clark Judge, Talk of Fame. He does some work for the 33rd team, and his Eye Test for 2 podcasts he does with our buddy Ira Feldman from Kaufman from down in Tampa is also a great listen. All right, McMullen, McDonald coming back. Put up on the show. We're going to be quick, almost out of time.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At McMullen Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you staying with us here on Birds 365, like we appreciate both Mike Gill and Clark. You and I both love Clark. We're old school.
Right,
we
yeah.
like the old school conversation, the Hall of Fame stuff. His grasp and memory of it is as good as anybody on the planet. And I did kind of throw him a setup curveball right down the middle of the plate about his former Lions coach, which he loves to talk about, that he's been overlooked for the Hall of Fame for years. And it didn't even dawn on me that, yeah, the fact that the Lions got to the championship for the first time in forever, brings to light the fact that it has been that long. And he had him there on the regular, which should help his candidacy for just this year. So good for Clark Judge on that one. All right, Johnny Mac, what are you going to be bringing to the table tomorrow? New coach, new rumor, Belichick, what happened to Vrabel? What little crystal ball action here. Forget about
the Eagles talk. It's Senior Bowl week, so you get the Eagles talk to so-and-so stories. Like, all right, they're going to talk to a bunch of people, but everybody likes to overreach with that kind of stuff. Oh, they talked to a running back yesterday. I forget his name, but
will it be a running back? Will it be a linebacker? Which of the positions they never changed their opinion on?
By the way, it was Andrew DeCecco, our buddy, who's going to be on the show tomorrow, so he'll be able to talk about it. He's very plugged in when it comes to draft stuff. And he mentioned that they met with the best running back that was there, Dylan Laub, from New Hampshire. Who had a big day at the Senior Bowl. Eagles talked to him. So
New Hampshire, you have to get Chip Kelly's blessing if you're going to talk?
Maybe. By the way, there's talk that Chip wants back in the NFL. By the way, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. But
does Chip even take Howie's calls or texts, or do you think he's got them?
I don't think they're. I don't think they have a great relationship.
I'm guessing that they're not talking twice a week. That's just a guess on my part. All right, Johnny Mac, he'll be here tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow. The question is, will you be here tomorrow? You can signify. You can vote now by hitting the like button on the way out. Going, I'll be back tomorrow, because Birds 365 is where I turn for my Eagles conversations in the morning. You can do it again tomorrow because we're back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.